Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time at this busy time of day to tune into our second Pathway to CFO webinar. I don't know if you've listened to the first webinar we had last month with Tristram from MetLife Care, but the feedback was very good. And the poll we put out towards the end of that webinar really was looking for a CFO from a particular type of business, and the message we got is that you liked growth companies and you like multinationals. So we've got both today. We've got the CFO from Vend, Angus Weir, with me today. Good afternoon, Angus.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
That's all right. And in typical Vend style, we've been gate crashed at the 11th hour by two members of Angus's team as well, who I may or may not ask a question or two of, depending on how well they behave. So thank you for tuning in. I'll just we'll flick over to the next screen now. I'll just talk you through the webinar screen. So you'll have this screen up in front of you here. Very straightforward. You've done the hard bit. The red arrow collapses the screen. We want questions, please. If you can just type it into the chat box there. I will do my best to get around as many questions as we can, but obviously we do get some duplicates through, and occasionally we do get some inappropriate questions, though Angus has said he's probably quite happy to answer those.
Yep, any questions welcome, inappropriate or not.
Right, away we go. On to the next screen. So Angus is our guest CFO today. Now, actually we'll flick onto the next screen, Ian, because it's quite a lot of information on there. Angus, talk us through, obviously we've got a bit of a snapshot here, a lovely picture of Angus and his career background. So Angus, if you just want to take a couple of minutes and just talk us through your career in terms of how you've landed this wonderful role at Vend.
Sure. Well, so in the beginning, I guess I started as a management accountant and went and did a bunch of roles within the same company for Prime Television in both Australia and New Zealand, sort of working my way up at both sides of the accounting equation, so management and financial, till I got to a financial controller role, and that business was sold to Sky way back in 2004, 2005, 6 actually.
This is Prime Television.
Yeah. So from there I took a bit of a left turn in the career. So went and did much more of a commercial role. So I was a corporate strategy analyst, which was getting involved in a number of projects that Sky had on at the time, and looking at things from a strategic and analytical point of view, not just pure accounting view. When I got sick of all the gigantic egos and politics in TV, I decided to go work for a company that had a really great culture of looking after its people, and I ended up at Courier Post, which was great. Courier's being very, very different than TV. And somewhere along the way, Orcon sort of came knocking, and they were interesting because they were a high-growth company looking for someone to come on as their finance manager. It was a really good lesson in how not to grow, to be honest, but really, really valuable learning experience at Orcon, and then eventually I got the role at Vend, and here we are today.
What do you say a good lesson in not how to grow? What lessons did you take from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that Orcon had, at least when I came into the business, was a fantastic culture. They were very agile, had a great team, really looked after their people, all of those good things. But as they grew, they sort of sacrificed more for growth. And I think that did the company a lot of damage in the long run. So hurt them in terms of their brand in the marketplace, but also just all of the good people and the amazing team that they had all sort of dissipated, and that eventually evolved into them being sold off.
Okay. Now tell me, so obviously this whole series is called Pathway to CFO. Your first CFO role is your current role at Vend. Tell us, how did that come about, the move from Orcon to Vend?
Great question. So I was really fortunate in that my brother was quite connected in the tech and startup scene in New Zealand at the time, and he knew Vaughan and knew what they were doing, and shoulder tapped me as soon as he found out about the role. And from that point on, it was just my number one mission in life to get it. It's truly my dream job. Vend is this unique set of circumstances that comes along probably only once in your career. It's an amazing product, really, really well designed, beautiful software that's disrupting an industry, as well as a fantastic team just stacked full of A players and passionate people, all underpinned by a sound business model. It's just phenomenal. It's going to be the next big Kiwi success story. It's going to be an amazing, huge global company, but all New Zealand based. So I couldn't be prouder or happier of the role.
I tell you what, let's flick over the next page then, because you've quite neatly rolled over to so we've got a couple of slides, which we'll change this in a minute or two, but just give everyone, because Vend's a name I'm very familiar with, and you're probably moderately familiar with it as well, but for a lot of people out there, they might not know the name, so give us an overview of the business and what you guys do, and really the sort of overriding culture in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So it did all start with a guy who wanted to make point-of-sale software that wasn't a POS, standing for a piece of excrement. Anywho, so Vaughan's vision really was to come up with software that helped retailers run their businesses better. Retail's a really hard industry, and the software that they use is normally, if you've ever worked in a retail shop, you'll know the software is terrible. It really is crappy. So Vaughan had this great idea of doing it in a much more intuitive, easy-to-use way, all cloud-based, so really easy for businesses to scale and to grow as they open up new stores. They didn't have to put in expensive equipment. All it would take is a MacBook or an iPad and an internet connection, and you're up and running. And from that very humble beginning of Vaughan knocking out some code on his laptop and then selling it to a couple of customers, it's grown from nothing to over, sort of 200 people spread across 7 offices worldwide, which is phenomenal, all in the space of 4 years.
So this is back in 2010.
2010 it was started, yep.
Yeah.
And at that point it was just Vaughan. He hired his first employee shortly thereafter, and then I was employee number 23, so I've sort of seen it go from that to, like
over 200 now, according to the screen here, but that's a pretty
absolutely
snapshot.
Right, yeah.
And tell us about the international presence, where you're at with that.
So we have offices in San Francisco, Toronto, Berlin, London, Melbourne, Auckland, and most recently the one that's not on there is Wellington. So, which is mainly to get us access to some of those good developers down there that Xero's been hogging for ages. But so yeah, we're truly global. Our first customer was based in New Zealand. Second customer was in the US. 15% of our revenues are local. The other 85% are offshore, and the New Zealand percentage is declining the faster we grow. So most of the growth is coming from offshore. We've got a heavy presence, which is a support and sales office in Toronto. It's about 40 people currently.
Yeah.
Melbourne's probably the next biggest at about 20. But the next big growth area is going to be Berlin, where we launch our European invasion.
All right, so if we can flick over to the next screen here. Tell, now, from a recruitment perspective, Vend are very well known in recruitment circles and come up as examples many times in terms of your rather unique culture in the company. Tell us about the culture that's been harboured by Vaughan and what it's like to work there.
Incredible. It's amazing. It's incredibly unique. It's something that internally I think we normalise a bit, and it's not until we go visit a friend who works at Telecom that we realise what the reality is for most people that are out there. It's difficult to describe, but firstly it's customer focused, so everything that we do adds value to our customers. Secondly, we do amazing things every day. There's I think a quote there. You say something once in a meeting and then someone puts it up on the website. But anyway, we seriously do look at the impossible things, and by those I mean the things that people say can't be done, and then we try and figure out a way that we can do them. And the last bit is we take care of our family. So if you come into our office, what you'll see on the surface I think is a whole lot of fun. There'll probably be some dogs running around, there's a pool table and a ping pong table and all of those sorts of things. Might be some people drinking depending on what time of day it is. Not depending on what day of the week it is. People will be wearing what they want, so yeah, you will see some people in suits, but you'll also see someone wearing a Captain America costume as well. All of that, though, is there because we're doing an amazing job and working really hard. The fun is just a byproduct of loving what we do and enjoying the people that we work with.
All right, now tell me, what are the, before I start on this next slide actually, what are the challenges of being CFO for a business like that then? So growing rapidly, growing multinationally, I'm sure there's quite a lot to keep under control.
Yep, absolutely. One of the key parts of being a CFO is I think one of the best analogies that I've heard to describe a CFO role is that you're the co-pilot, and you switch between a role where you're monitoring and a role where you're driving. And you definitely need a complementary skill set to the CEO. In some cases, you're taking that vision and you're turning it into something that's measurable and tangible. And in other cases, you're telling him that that's a really bad idea and maybe we shouldn't blow up the cash register with some dynamite in the office, and things like that. So part of the challenge for us is keeping pace with all of the growth and the change. A key thing for us is making sure that we don't lose our culture as we grow and that we continue to make it a really fun, amazing place that we want to turn up to every day. In addition to that, we're a growth company, so it's about managing cash and making sure that we don't run out.
Cornerstone of any good CFO's job, I'm sure.
Indeed.
Look, generically, what would you see as the core skills for a CFO then, Angus, in terms of, you said a very complementary skill set with your CEO, but what do you see as the fundamental building blocks for a CFO in a business?
So firstly, I think it is that skill of taking that vision and the intangible and turning it into something that's measurable and operational. I think that one of the most underrated skills actually of being a CFO, or that a CFO needs to possess, is being calm and logical and rational. It's really easy, particularly if you're in a company like ours where it's super exciting and everyone's coming up with great ideas, that you want to go, yeah, let's do that. But you sort of have to be the voice of reason, and you have to be that trusted advisor that the business relies on to give an independent opinion, that you have no vested interest. You're just looking at what is best in any given set of circumstances. So you need some sort of constructive skepticism, not cynicism. So it's not about saying no all the time. It's actually about finding ways to say yes and making sure things are done in the right way.
And of course, as CFO, you will be managing a team of people, two of which we've got here today. I'll ask Antonio first. What's Angus like as a manager, in your honest opinion?
He is absolutely brilliant, and I'm not just saying that because he's here. He is someone that takes care to build a really high quality team and then gives them all of the resource to go off and make their own decisions, and will come in and say, what can I do to make you more effective? And as an employee, being trusted with these decisions just makes you want to go so hardcore. It's just awesome. It's brilliant. It's fantastic.
And you guys have both worked at Vend for about the same period of time, haven't you?
Actually about a year, maybe about 6 months.
Okay. Ashley, what are your thoughts on the boss? Putting you on the spot totally here.
Yeah, I definitely say exactly what Antonio said. When you look up to someone and respect someone, their intelligence and their people skills, it just makes you want to be a better person and, yeah, a better employee.
Now, guys, feel free to pipe through some questions. We haven't had one yet, and I'm itching to ask one, inappropriate or not.
I've got a question for you guys. So in a place that's moving forward so fast, how does the finance function not be the policeman in here and the anti-fund police in terms of saying, oh, geez, nah, can't do it, or whatever? How do you sort of rationalise all that?
It's really difficult. Look, we work at a company that hates process, so that's number one. You have to layer in the process so finely that people just don't know that it's there. If it doesn't help them do something, they're not going to respect your process. In fact, we've got a sign which says, just effing do it. You can fill in the effing for yourself. But and that really gives people a license in the business to go around any process that we put out, if there's a good reason to. So that's one thing that we have to overcome firstly, and it just has to be mindful of what is the outcome we're looking for and helpful. And those are two of the principles that as finance department we try and live by, which is we're enabling growth, right? We're helping people do what they need to do. We're not getting in the way of what they need to do. So with all of the growth and all of the opportunities and everything going on, and it can be a bit chaotic and crazy, it's our job to make sure that there's enough structure and rigor that we can plot our path and make sure that we're on track or off track and course correct as necessary. And that's sort of our role. It's a guidance role. It's not necessarily saying no. It's finding ways to say yes, or it might just be saying not now rather than no, or these are the things that would need to happen in order for us to do that. So it's about, I mean, it's a bit of a wank word at the moment, but it's about being that business partner. It's about understanding the needs of the business and then just working with people to get the outcome that they need.
So a bit of a safety net to enable the trapeze artists to do their work, but know that, you know, it's still going to work.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of trust and empowerment, and I think Antonio touched on it. So we really trust our people to make good decisions, and when people don't make good decisions, then we have a conversation and we learn from it and move on. So we're always learning, we're always getting things wrong, and we're always experimenting. So the key part of that for us is making sure that we measure what we do and then learn from it. That's the key bit, the key role that we sort of play in that, which is we try heaps of stuff, see what works, figure out what it means for our business, and then feed that back into the decision-making process.
It's a good point, because sometimes people mistake blistering pace for progress, and they're not necessarily the same thing. You can be just going around the loop.
No, absolutely right. And so we have a saying which is less haste, more speed, which means that we have a really good decision-making process, but in the absence of having all the data and all the facts, we'll rely on our intuition and then validate that with data as soon as we can get it.
That mystery voice, by the way, is Ian McGibbon, our managing director. Who did I introduce you?
I just crashed in like these guys.
Ian drives the technology here. But very good question, thank you. Next one, which you may have started to touch on this, Angus. Taking the technical accounting stuff out of the equation, what are the key personal traits you believe an effective CFO should have in your business or in any other business, really?
Yeah, it's a really hard to define skill, but it is a key strategic skill, which is taking that vision and breaking it down into the milestones and tracking really well against the path. That's one. Being calm, logical, and rational, that's two. It's something that sounds really easy on the face of it, but when you're in a room full of emotion, it can be very difficult. And as a CFO, you want to sort of bring the tension down and make sure that people are focused on what the outcomes are and all those sorts of good things. But I think the key one is actually for us is problem solving. It's part of my role is to promote fresh thinking and new ideas and to foster really, really good commercial thinking. And sometimes it's about pushing people out of their comfort zones and helping them think in a different way about the same problem. And it also is about helping the business and the people in the business to find ways to say yes, to make the decisions not this or that, but this and that. So yeah, problem solving is definitely key and probably underrated. Strategy and strategic vision, again, it's something that people talk about a lot, but is actually quite hard to develop unless you've got a lot of room to step back from the day-to-day, think long-term, and intuitively have a sense of what in the business you can change if you're on or off track. I mean, if you're going really great with something, can you double down on that? If you're going really badly with something, what do you need to change to get back on track? Those are some key skills, definitely.
And just coming back to Vend, third point, how, I'm gathering you probably know a few other CFOs and senior finance people in other businesses. How would you describe the difference between your role and I put here a more traditional company, but you don't fit the bill for your typical CFO, Angus, in many ways, do you?
Yeah, definitely. I guess if you were comparing it to a traditional CFO role, mine is much more forward-looking. Business is a journey, so it's about helping shape that vision and the destination that we have in mind and making sure that we get there. It's really, though, for me, I think, is a really strong partnership with the CEO. It's about being the complementary skill set to what he has to offer and making sure that the things that he might lack in are being covered off. And I think the problem solving and fresh thinking, it's not something, I guess, that you would, as a CFO, think necessarily that the CFO would be the person driving new ideas or new ways of doing things. But that's certainly part of what I do, and getting involved in the strategy and shaping that's a huge part of what I do.
All right.
Is that part of the fact of having a CEO recognising that finance isn't an overhead but actually a contributor to the business?
Actually, yeah, and that's one of the things that's unusual. So I was hired as employee 23, like I said, and it's very unusual for a startup to hire a CFO at that stage. So it was Vaughan recognising that that's what they needed to really drive the business forward, to identify what are the levers that we can pull to make this thing grow even faster than it was, and to enable the growth and make sure that we don't, blow it up, which is another concern. Growing too fast is sometimes as bad as growing not fast enough. So for us, it's about really controlled, measured growth.
Now, I've got a couple of questions, sorry. They both look appropriate to read out, I think. Firstly, how do you structure your team when you have such high growth, and how do you ensure that growing your team is done in the best way?
That is a great question. So the team structure is very fluid, I would say. We have areas of responsibility, but we work on all of the work as a team. So it means while your role primarily, say Ashley's role might be as a financial accountant, if there's some forecasting work to be done, she'll help out with it. And the same goes for Antonio. So right now it's about having people who are multidisciplinary sort of people who can cover both. As we grow, it's going to be about bringing in specialists to support them as we build out the functions within them. One of the key things that we do is all of the finance team is currently based in New Zealand, and that has some challenges, particularly when you're dealing with a country like Germany, which has very specific and particular tax and accounting rules. And so as we grow, it's going to be more of a distributed team, which is going to be a challenge because we're going to have people that we need to interface with and interact with that are in different time zones in different countries and come from different cultures. Structuring the team, it's going to be heavily weighted always towards the analytics, insights, and planning, so the traditional FP&A function. We tend to do the right amount of compliance, which is just enough. So it may look at the outset that we sort of run fast and loose, but to be honest, we report under full IFRS, and we prepare an annual report, which is pretty much the same as what you would get from Xero. So our standards for that are really high, but we make sure that we spend most of our time on the things that add value to the business, not the things that are just things that we have to do.
That question touches very nicely on recruitment, which we'll come back to in a few minutes. The other question we got here, your company style and the culture is clearly different from the typical corporate. Do some of your new employees struggle with the culture? If so, what are the main issues and how are these overcome?
Yep, it can be a huge adjustment. We empower people, like we said. We also move at a massively rapid pace, and the amount of change is sometimes difficult for people, particularly some accountants who like a lot of structure or are used to a lot of structure. We give people a lot of freedom, so that can be difficult. If you're someone who enjoys autonomy and really getting your hands stuck into something and running with it and being accountable and responsible for something, you'll love it. If that scares you, it might not be the place for you. So
I'm going to ask this to Ashley as well, because I know Ashley previously worked at Whangarei District Council for a number of years, albeit with a bit of travelling last year. But how did you find the transition from working for a smaller local council to Vend?
I didn't find it difficult in terms of like the culture or anything. I think I was definitely ready for something like that and being entrusted and empowered. I think just the speed of everything that happens is the one identifier. Things change, you can get through stuff really fast. At council, I think you had to fill out 10 pieces of paper to get anything done, get it signed by 2 different people. So a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of paperwork, a lot of slow movement, and a lot of barriers where we don't get that. But at the same time, I'm on more of the reporting side of things at Vend, which is probably closer to the process side, so I'm not too far away from process.
So you're telling me Vend moves faster than a local council?
Yeah, definitely.
Probably not groundbreaking yet. All right, now I think I've probably covered off this first bullet point already. You've probably talked us through that, Angus, haven't you, how you put yourself to be considered for the CFO role at Vend. Maybe if you just want to touch on this next bullet point, I'd probably ask you this briefly. What did you learn in your earlier years of training that helped you get to where you are? One thing I'm particularly keen to ask you is because you didn't work in a CA firm at all, did you?
no.
And I know it's a choice many young accountants have. Do they go into a CA firm or do they go into a commercial role? What sort of formed your choices in those early years?
It was really where the opportunity was in the early years for me. I just got offered an opportunity that was in a firm, and they were an Australian firm, so I had the opportunity to do CPA Australia, which is cool because I never wanted to work at a CA firm. I'd rather stab myself in the eye than account for every 6 months of my time. So I was always more interested in business and helping businesses grow and understanding business, and that was really the key part of that decision, and I think it's really cool that people have a choice now. What did I learn from my early years of training? I think the biggest thing is when I was an early manager, I used to treat people how I wanted to be treated, and I learned really quickly that that doesn't work unless I've employed people who are exactly the same as me. So over the years I've learned to treat people as they want to be treated and recognise that different styles are needed in different situations and for different personalities.
Yeah, okay. Right, talk me through the next bullet point here, if I can get it up on the screen. There probably isn't an average day, but just in terms of day-to-day, what would you say for someone walking in off the street that didn't know what you did at all? What would you actually do in an average day?
It's a really good question, and it's really hard to answer because there is no such thing as an average day. So say, for example, today I was in a 2-hour exec meeting, and it's a weekly meeting that we have where we look at our strategy and how we're tracking against our key strategic objectives. There were some follow-up sort of meetings that came out of that because we realised that we were off track in one of our key areas. So it was sitting down with the person who looks after the development of our product and our COO and the guy who heads up our revenue team and just working out a solution to that particular problem. I also reviewed some contract documentation as well as looked at an audit report as well as had a meeting with my team to dish out work for the week. It really does vary, and it depends on what's going on at that particular point in time.
So there really isn't a typical day?
Not at all, and it can run the range from, you know, you're working on board papers to doing forecasts to meeting with a bank to anything really that's on a CFO's plate.
All right.
How do you manage time zones? Because you're operating in so many, and so your support team I can sort of get, but what about finance in terms of operating different times?
Thankfully, finance is all headquartered in New Zealand now, but you're right, we have to interact with people in the other offices. We're fortunate in that the only really bad time zone at the moment is London and Europe. Toronto is not too bad. We've got a couple of hours in the morning to interface with them, which is pretty cool. Yeah, it is a challenge, so it generally means early morning sometimes for us to line up with them.
I know you guys utilise technology.
We do, so everything is on the cloud, and we're always, you know, G-chatting or Skyping or all of those sorts of things.
Right, now I'm going to just skate past that next question because we're going to come to recruitment in a minute, so we'll just skip that one and we'll come back to that. Now, a slot I ask all our CFOs that come in, advice for up-and-coming accountants, two potentially in the room right now with us, of course. A mentor, how important is it to work under one, and how do you go about choosing a good mentor in your opinion?
I think that question is really about you and your personality and the sort of person that gets the most out of you. It really is also about what skills you're looking to develop. So you should be looking for someone who emulates in some way your idea of what an ideal CFO looks like or where you want to be, and then try and get them to give you all of their learning so you don't have to make the same mistakes that they did to learn all those things.
All right. To the next one, what's, in your opinion, Angus, what sets a talented CFOs apart from, I meet a lot of accountants coming up through the ranks. Obviously, a certain percentage of those will go on to bigger CFO roles. What sets talented CFOs apart from those who you think may sort of plateau out in sort of mainstream accounting roles?
There are a couple of key things, and I think they're all soft skills, which we tend to neglect as we go through. You've got to be a really great manager, firstly, and then become a leader, because that's what businesses are demanding of CFOs, that you're a true leader in the business. So you've got to be able to persuade people and bring people along on the journey and tell a vision and tell a really great story, whether that's you talking to investors or you talking to your team or you talking to the wider group in your company. That's number one. Number two is the greatest CFOs that I've worked with have had that inherent understanding, the intuition to know whether or not a decision has a key strategic impact for a business. And that's something that takes a lot of time and many years to develop, and some people never really get there. It's about looking up and considering things from a strategic level and sort of understanding intuitively what the levers are in a business that you can pull in the particular business that you're working in to make it better, to grow, to be more efficient, all of those sorts of great things.
And like you say, some people just won't naturally get there, but for some people it probably comes more naturally than others, I'd imagine.
No, I think that the biggest bit of advice I would give someone who's sort of sitting at the FC level would be to hire someone amazing underneath you so that you can take a step up and consider some of those things and be really valuable to whomever's above you.
Yep. All right. To wrap this up, and then we'll talk about your current recruitment in a minute. What one piece of advice would you give to take away for today's participants, excluding that pearl of wisdom you just said, of course?
It's hard to limit it to just one, so I'm going to go with several. Look, always be on the lookout for the opportunities that you're aiming for. That would be number one. The opportunity with Vend only came up because I was really open to it and jumped at it when it came up.
Did you put yourself out there to be approached about that job, or?
As soon as I heard about it, absolutely, and then I totally stalked Vaughan and I turned up to one of his customer meetings and meetups, sorry, not meetings.
Just wouldn't leave him alone until he
yeah,
got it.
Basically I just wore a Vend t-shirt until they said, fine, you can join the company. No, so I mean, don't be afraid to chase those opportunities when they do come up. But also, I guess if you're coming from a Gen Y or younger sort of age bracket, then there's a perception out there that you might put your entitlement before your ability to earn it. And what I mean by that is don't be afraid of the hard work, because that's really what separates the people who succeed and the people who don't. And it's the people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get involved in everything. The people who build deep relationships all around the business and are just generally helpful. Those are the ones that build the connections necessary to take the step up.
So not turning your nose up at the
No, I mean, in our
the
business, it's about having absolutely no ego, and just recognizing that wherever an idea comes from doesn't matter. If it's a good idea, it's a good idea. Those sorts of attitudes.
All right. Now, you're recruiting at the moment, aren't you?
We are, yes.
Now, for anyone that's interested, if you go to Vend's website, there's a wonderful careers page on there that will detail all that. But firstly, look, what do you look for when recruiting people in your team, Angus? Just sort of general personality traits and experience, potentially.
Look, mainly we're looking for smart, capable people who are just really wanting to do amazing things in business. They might not have had the opportunity where they are. They might have been hamstrung, like Ashley said, by process or by a company going really slow. We do look for people who don't have an ego, so culture fit is really important to us. I don't know. You guys know. I hired you. So what do you think?
Oh, you've embarrassed them, man.
Oh,
Well, there's a good example of complete lack of ego. I've just realised I poured you a Pinot Gris, not a Pinot Noir, so and didn't say a thing about it. So
That's why I can't talk now. Angus, tell me, so the jobs that you're recruiting for at the moment, just give us this is a blatant platform just to sort of pitch a few jobs out there, the ones that you're sourcing for at the moment. What are you looking for at the moment?
yeah, we're looking for people at all levels, to be honest, right from accounts assistants to assistant accountants to accountants. So if you're any one of those things, or even a financial controller, hit me up. So again, sorts of people that we're looking for are just people who want to get on board an amazing Kiwi success company, people who really want to build a truly world-class finance function. We're really passionate about the standards that we set and about doing amazing things, and if you are too, you'll love it where we are.
What do people do if they're interested?
Just hit up the careers page and all the details will be there and you can apply, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
All right, awesome, thank you.
Oh, in special mention, we actually got a really big drive on our analytics and insights. So if you're sick of accounting like I got to a point, and you're wanting to try an analyst role, or you know any great analysts, we're looking for a bunch of them. So our company is very, very, very data driven. We make all our decisions based on data, and we love dashboards and all of those sorts of cool things. So if you're one of those people and that gets you hot and bothered, also hit me up on the careers page.
Would there be a specific salary range, or?
again, we're looking at all levels, so people from some inexperienced, say, analysts, people moving into it, to the more experienced, so the whole range.
All right. Lovely. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think for anyone who does aspire to be a CFO, one of the main things I would say that you should look for when you're considering an opportunity is what are the growth opportunities that are afforded to you there, and how good is the person that you're going to be reporting to and developing people. Because that's going to be the key differentiator to how much you get out of that opportunity.
Yeah,
in that time.
From my job in recruitment, the number one reason we meet people wanting a new job is because they don't get on with the manager or they're not getting the development they want. So yeah, completely underpins that, Angus. Well, look, thank you very much. I think a vast majority of people generally do listen to the recorded version of this, but the recording will be available on Farrow Jamieson's website pretty much immediately, I think, tomorrow morning. Email me any feedback, adam@farrowjamieson.com. Any suggestions, criticism is always welcomed with open arms.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially criticism. Next scheduled CFO, Pathway to CFO webinar is in February. We'll take a couple of months off because it's party season and holidays, where we've got another CFO from a fast-growing Kiwi business lined up. So in the meantime, have a wonderful Christmas and New Year, everybody, and just put me an email if you've got any suggestions. Angus, Ashley, and Antonio, thank you for your attendance / gate crashing.
Yeah.
And thank you very much.
Thanks.